What is the most damage you've ever done with a typo? I remember a reply from several years ago that was kind of similar to this. A couple was trying to meet at the hospital because a family member was having a baby. The guy was running late because of traffic or whatever. He tries to text her, "I hope I get there before the baby does." Smiley face. Instead, he unknowingly sends, "I hope I get there before the baby dies." Smiley face. I still crack up about that one. I worked in the architecture industry for many years. One of the aspects of the job, when we were designing a new building in a community, was to present our plans to the public in a place like a community center or a school gym, and they would be able to voice their concerns. The presentation materials would usually take the form of panels printed on foam cardboard and placed around the space. These presentations are called public consultations. In one instance, we had printed about 30 boards with the title X Project Public Consultation at the top, only the L had been forgotten in the word public. Hilarity ensued. Luckily the mistake was caught before they placed all the boards, and they were quickly reprinted, which cost a lot of money. If it had been any other letter we would have let it slide. I started writing reports for my company a couple of years ago. We use a template or previous report from the same client for new reports. One section we almost always include is called public information. As you can guess, it was misspelled public information in the table of contents. This was in dozens of reports over a few years. Always wonder if any clients noticed it, and I never pointed it out. I assume as it wasn't corrected until I saw it. I used to work for a museum booking group visits and educational programs for tour companies and schools. Was working on a reservation and they had only told me how many students were in the group, but I also needed the number of adults. So, I sent an email to the teacher. "Hello teacher name. We'll also need to know approximately how many sluts will be visiting from your school." Luckily, they had a sense of humor. "Not sure how many of us are sluts, but if you meant adults it's going to be around 8 or 10. My first finance job had to do with managing corporate cash. I was moving funds from one account to another and accidentally hit an extra zero. I ended up moving $30 instead of $3. Luckily it was between internal accounts, so it was easily reversible, but I didn't know that at the time. I shat my pants and my boss let me panic for 30 seconds before fixing it. I had a coworker wire $50 from our bank account to another bank account belonging to another division instead of 5 once. Everyone here, after promptly contacting the other party to have them return the extra BC, "We're all cool like that," just kind of laughed it off. It's considered somewhat of a rite of passage in this job to fuck up a wire transfer like that at some point, but I think my CO worker is the current record holder for amount. Sorry for the incontinence, I meant inconvenience. Of course, it went out to a group of managers who reported to my boss. We were going to have really limited office coverage for the holidays, so one of their usual processes was going to be delayed, and I was asked to send the official email about how we were going to do business during the couple of days after Christmas. Fortunately, they were great people and we all laughed. Not a typo, but along these lines. I went out to assess a very elderly and frail gent for equipment, suitable chair, walking aids. After a while his wife asked me to go into the bedroom. She pulled back the covers on their bed, looked at me and said my husband is incontinent in bed. Still not 100% sure if she meant incontinence, but given their marriage of 60+ years, that was what I went with. I got my entire company IP banned from a genome database service by leaving a single semicolon out of a script I wrote which was intended to automate requests. In retrospect I should have tested it better before setting it to run and walking away from my desk for an hour while my PC tried to download their entire human genome dataset a few times over. I mistyped regards on an angrily worded email. I was told by my manager that, no matter how annoyed I was, I should call people that. It's hard to explain that it was an accident given the tone of the email. Always take a second and proofread any angry email, and then don't send it. It isn't worth it. I've posted my own worst one, But worst, or weirdest, I've seen was from my father. His texts are legendarily awful, but he outdid himself. He accidentally sent a text message to himself that was a random jumble of letters, asking the lines of He then thought my mother had sent him this text. He was meant to be meeting her at a cafe. He decided this entirely random text he had sent himself must be a new restaurant, and she decided to meet him there instead. He spent ages looking for this restaurant. He decided it might be an Indian restaurant. He got very annoyed when he couldn't find it. He eventually went to where they were meant to meet, late and grouchy, and complained to my mother, who was patiently waiting in the right place, about her doing this to him. He refused to accept. He sent the message. My mother's not good with technology, but correctly pointed out it was clearly showing as his side of the conversation on both their phones. He's still a bit annoyed and defensive about it. He's not horrible, just grouchy, and an idiot. They are divorced but get on well. People constantly mistake them for an adorable old couple, which is hilarious. I once sent a mass email to senior VPs and C-level execs that I was going to shut down the server cluster over the weekend. A half hour later, the guy stops me in the hallway and tells me that I sent an email to all these big shots that I was going to shut down the server cluster. LOL. I also sent a message where I was asked to look at a problem and send a message to a bunch of managers and VPs that I would investigate things, except that it said that I would investigate thongs. LOL. Whoever put the U, I, and O keys next to each other on a QWERTY keyboard, well played. This is the best practical joke ever devised. Once when I was about 14-15, I was working for an art gallery and the owner had me write a happy birthday email to her friend. In hindsight, that's pretty weird, but anyway, I accidentally wrote happy birthday dead Christina instead of dear, and when Christina responded, it was clear that she found the typo humorous. My boss, however, did not, and she flipped out on me and made me cry over it. She then had me write an apology email explaining things like who I was, how old I was, and where I went to school. That was over a decade ago, and looking back, everything about that was super inappropriate. I was very happy to stop working there. Hobby. So I want to get a new video card, but the one I want is like $1,100 bucks. Me? You can spend that much on a part-time. Then I turned my ringer off and went into my appointment. 2 hours later I had several texts from a very happy husband who was super excited about his new video card. It arrives today, so FML. Edit, it's arrived. It's pretty damn sexy. Plus the sheer joy in his eyes as he rebuilds his computer makes it worth every penny. 10/10 would typo again. I was 18, just starting college, and embarrassingly, this was my first plunge into dating. High school was dry for me. I really liked this girl. She was smart, pretty, sarcastic, dark-humored, and we liked the same music. We hit it off almost instantly and it was really nice. We were texting back and forth and she suddenly asked me, "What do you want from a girl?" I meant to reply oral, starting with the important questions. For those of you who don't know, oral is a slang word in Spanish, typically spoken in Mexico and has many uses. In this case, I wanted to use it to show her I was surprised she showed romantic interest first. Well, it turns out my old BlackBerry didn't know I was Mexican and decided it knew better and auto-corrected my text for me. The text exchange went something like this. So, what do you want from a girlfriend? Me, oral. One of my professor from university was very strict and she would reduce marks if assignments were late, even for minutes. I had experience in past where I submitted the assignment but forgot to hand in Google Classroom where you upload the assignment but there is an extra button to hand in to teacher. For one of such assignments I was back home and about to catch a train for an overnight journey to college. So I had to submit the assignment that night before I go to station. I was in a hurry but somehow managed to submit the assignment on time. Fast forward, reached college the next day. Everyone was talking about who all submitted in time and all. Proud me who submitted it in time just opened it in Google Classroom to send it to my friends. I froze for a moment because the heading was Sexperiment in bold. font size 16 as heading. In theory I pressed Ctrl+S a couple of times but somehow an extra S came in front of experiment. I worked in a media library, and while away for my honeymoon, set my out of office to state that I'd be away, but that if tit is important, please contact female coworker. It was like that for over a week. I came back to dozens of emails that were essentially variations of "Hey, I don't need anything but I heard about your out of office, and had to see it lol." From then on, we would all mention how important it was every so often. I work in construction and have to regularly coordinate with building management for access to places. Think 60-story and up Manhattan skyscrapers size of building and level of people. I needed access to a fire pump room that we called the pump room for short. My email subject was asking for access to the pimp room. The manager responded by thanking me for installing such a fun-sounding room since he never heard of it before in his building, and the chief engineer replied that it was the room that had lots of holes in it. Thankfully they were a fun group of guys and we all laughed our asses off, but what a stupid typo. Not me, but my new fiancé. When we were just friends, he had a crush on me and I knew it. We were texting about what we wanted to do when we saw each other after our Christmas break from college. He said he wanted to give me a hug and I jokingly replied, "What if I don't want a hug? We are both terrible flirts. Not the point of the story lol." He replied with, "Well, I mean, it's your body and I wouldn't force anything in you," keyword being in. So I replied, "You mean on, not in, right?" To which he replied the following: "Him, on him, holy fuck him, on. But now he's my fiancé, so it all worked out." I was an intern at a gov agency and I was running a model on the same server that was hosting the 10K employees email, and my model had an infinite loop because I missed a closing tag. Anyhow, the server went down in a horrible fashion and someone came to my desk, cause there was no email, and said, "Are you __?" Then said, "Come with me," and I got scolded pretty bad. Me? Not much. But this story is too good not to share, so my apologies, but I think this time it's worth it. My dad was part owner of a casino when I was a kid. There was an ad that went out that contained the word bigger. And as we all realized with the much bigger Navy incident a few years ago, the B on a standard keyboard is next to the N. Yeah, my dad was not happy. He fired the guy who was supposed to proofread the ads, which I think we can all agree was justified. I texted my GF at the time, "Home safe," after driving home from a party at my friend's house, and safe photo corrected to Sage, and I get a "who's Sage" back. I fell asleep one before I received the response and woke up to like 12 texts and 10 missed calls. Got dumped, probably for the better, and blocked, so I didn't even get to explain it was autocorrect. The classic from history is this one. In the 1870s, a good portion of the federal government income came from tariffs on imported goods. A list of items free from tariff was supposed to include fruit plants tropical and semi-tropical for the purpose of propagation or cultivation, but it came out in the printed law as fruit plants tropical and semi-tropical for the purpose of propagation or cultivation, so all imported tropical fruit was free from duty. After some wrangling and lawsuits, until Congress passed a correction bill, it cost the government millions of 1870s dollars, a lot of money, all due to an error by the copying clerk. https://www.buzzinainsider.com/ This typo cost America about $40 million 2015 one. For a bit, I ran a WoW guild. I don't recommend it, but whatever. Anyhow, we had a small raid team and were mildly successful. Making progress in MIC and such. Our core raid group was maybe 20-25 folks, and the other 15-20 slots would get filled with pretty much anyone that could fog a mirror without breaking it, you know, standard vanilla 40-man raiding. Well, as these things typically go, people came and went, and occasionally we had someone who came but didn't really bring enough to the table, or worse, they continually wiped the entire table by pulling ads during Barongeddon by being an idiot, so I had to slash kick occasionally. I didn't enjoy it, but heavy is the head that wears the crown or something. In one such scenario, I had to kick a player from the guild that just was an all-around fuckhead. Aside from the red wipes and subpar performance overall, he was also just kind of an abrasive person to be around. So he had to go. Now, the problem that arose was that his character name was remarkably close to someone else's, the main tank. Our main tank was a great tank, but also a bit of a drama queen and also more or less the leader of a clique within the guild that was made up of folks from a guild we merged, absorbed at some point prior. You can see where this is going. So I type out /kickherald ... when I meant to type /kickroll, not the actual names, but the difference between them was that minor. Cue a massive shitstorm of drama that ended up destroying the entire guild within like 5 hours. Mount was on and out and unleashed a torrent of insults about me, the other leadership, etc. You know, the type of stuff you can't unsay after the person you said them to explains it was a typo. Dude, he left, as did almost all of the folks that came with him. Then the Fairweather Raiders left to go to other guilds. Then the August started dropping too, since you don't recover from something like this quickly. By that evening, almost the entire core raid team was gone, most of the leadership was gone, and I was already shooting whispers to friends about who needed a resto shaman. Also, the guy who I intended to kick from the guild ended up in the same guild I did, briefly, but he was kicked from there. It wasn't me but my former district manager. We had a big event coming up and he's all about the pump up email to encourage the team. He was always a bit cliché and cheesy but had a good heart. In this pump up email he talked about how great the event was going to be, and hidden in the middle was a bit about collateral, but instead of the word collateral he wrote clitoral. In an email that got sent not only to all of the stores in the district, but he had also CC'd our regional and HR managers. None of the general managers were brave enough to mention it to him, but there were plenty of phone calls between stores. Back in college, I worked on the school newspaper. We were holding up production to get a theater review. This was back in the day when typesetting machines only showed one line of text on the screen. I typed up the review, printed it and pasted it to the master copy. Like I said, way back in the day, the copy editor reviewed and the issue was sent to the printers. Fast forward to the next day when an irate man came into the newspaper office claiming we ruined his life. He thought we were mocking him on purpose. And that, my friends, is how Bob Butts became forevermore known as Bobo Butts. I feel bad about to this day. My grandma had just learned how to text, with the help of my aunt, and she texts all her kids and grandkids on their birthdays, holidays. We have a huge family, so she really enjoys it. On my birthday a couple of years ago, she sent me a happy birthday text and we talked for a bit. She mentioned how a hurricane narrowly missed her house the other day, and I wanted to reply with "that's some good luck, Grandma." But of course my stupid brain wrote "fuck" instead out of habit. I didn't even notice and she didn't respond, so I forgot about it. A few days later my mom texted me and asked me to please watch my language, since my grandma is very religious. When I pulled up the convo with my grandma I was mortified. It may not seem like a huge deal to some of you, but boy did I feel awful and embarrassed that my poor sweet grandma thought I was swearing at her. Obviously I apologized and we cleared it up, but still. I got this. When I was a junior lawyer, back in the days when documents were still dictated and typed up more than mainly precedent forms being used, my boss told me he was proofreading and found in a draft lease he had dictated that his young secretary had typed that under landlord's remedies for default by tenant was a right of rear entry, instead of re-entry. My boss was gay, but even he thought that was a bit draconian. Back when my wife and I were just boyfriend, girlfriend, I texted her, "I love you," wife's nickname I gave her, but my phone's autocorrect kicked in and changed her nickname to Ashley. I didn't realize what had happened until she responded with, "What the fuck?" No, I didn't, and still don't, know an Ashley, and I've never used that word before on my phone. Thankfully, we resolved the issue and were married with a baby on the way. Just 12 weeks left.